Welcome to the lecture on economic systems and market dynamics. In this lecture, we will explore key concepts that drive economic systems and market behavior. We'll delve into topics such as Pareto efficiency, property rights, comparative advantage, supply and demand, and the impact of government interventions. By the end of this lecture, you'll have a deeper understanding of how these concepts shape our economy and influence decision thinking. Here you'll see learning objectives for this chapter. Economic systems are designed to allocate resources efficiently to meet the needs and wants of individuals. This involves making decisions about what to produce, how to produce it, and how to distribute the final output. Think of it as a giant puzzle where the pieces need to fit together perfectly to ensure everyone's needs are met. The decision on what goods and services to produce is influenced by consumer preferences, resource availability, and technological advancements. For example, in a market economy, if there's a high demand for electric cars, manufacturers will focus on producing more of them to meet consumer needs. This involves choosing the production methods that minimize costs and maximize efficiency. Factors such as labor, capital, and technology play a crucial role in this decision. For instance, a company might decide to automate its production line to reduce labor costs and increase output. The distribution of goods and services can be determined by market mechanisms, government policies, or a combination of both. The goal is to ensure that resources are allocated in a way that maximizes overall welfare. For example, in a free market, prices act as signals to allocate resources. While in a centrally planned economy, the government decides how resources are distributed. The answer depends on the allocation mechanisms. Different economic systems use different mechanisms to allocate resources. Free markets rely on decentralized decision-making by individuals, while central planning involves government officials making economic decisions. Each system has its strengths and weaknesses, and the choice of allocation mechanism can significantly impact the efficiency and equity of resource distribution. Resource allocation is Pareto efficient if no alternative helps at least one person without harming anyone else. It's a key concept in economics. Imagine a situation where you have a pizza and you want to share it among your friends. If you can't give more pizza to one friend without taking some away from another, you've reached Pareto efficiency. This principle helps us understand how resources can be allocated in a way that maximizes overall welfare. Free markets are like a bustling marketplace where everyone makes their own decisions. Think of a farmer deciding what crops to grow based on market prices. These individual decisions collectively lead to efficient outcomes, guided by the invisible hand of the market. In contrast, centrally planned economies are like a chess game where the government is the player moving all of the pieces. While this can ensure certain goals are met, it often lacks the flexibility and efficiency of decentralized decision-making. I want to emphasize again, Pareto efficiency means reallocating resources without harming others. Rideshare apps like Uber achieve near Pareto improvements by increasing transport efficiency without requiring new infrastructure. Property rights are the backbone of a market economy. Imagine owning a piece of land. You have the right to decide how to use it, whether to build a house, farm, or rent it out. These rights encourage investment and innovation. Private property rights means that specific individuals or firms have control over resources. For example, a company owning a patent for a new technology can decide how to use it, leading to advancements in economic growth. The ability to transfer property rights is crucial for trade. Think of selling your car to someone else. This transfer allows resources to be allocated efficiently based on individual preferences. While property rights are important, they come with certain limitations to protect public interests. For instance, zoning laws may restrict how you can use your land to ensure community welfare. Trade is all about exchanging goods and services to maximize value. Imagine trading your old bicycle for a guitar. You value the guitar more, and the other person values the bicycle more. Both parties benefit from trade. By allowing individuals to specialize in what they do best and trade for other goods, trade increases overall productivity and creates value. For example, a country specializing in producing wine can trade with another country specializing in producing cheese, benefiting both. People have different tastes and preferences, and trade allows them to obtain goods that better match their needs. Countries can specialize in producing goods where they have a lower opportunity cost and trade for other goods, leading to more efficient resource allocation. We call this comparative advantage. And specialization is focusing on specific tasks. Individuals and countries can achieve higher levels of productivity and efficiency. Let's talk more about specialization. Specialization allows individuals to focus on what they do best. For example, a skilled carpenter specializes in making furniture, while a talented chef specializes in cooking. This leads to higher quality efficiency. Comparative advantage occurs when an individual has a lower opportunity cost of producing a good. Comparative advantage is the basis for specialization in trade. It explains how individuals and countries can produce goods at a lower opportunity cost and trade for goods that others produce more efficiently. By specializing in what they do best and trading with others, individuals and countries can achieve higher levels of welfare and economic growth. For instance, a country with a comparative advantage in technology can trade with another country specializing in agriculture, benefiting both. Comparative advantage is a key concept in international trade. It explains how countries can benefit from trade by specializing in the production of goods where they have the lower opportunity cost and trading with others. For example, if country A can produce wine more efficiently than cheese, and country B can produce cheese more efficiently than wine, both countries benefit by trading wine for cheese. And you can see that demonstrated here in this slide. The demand curve shows the quantity of a good that consumers are willing to buy at various prices. It's typically downward sloping, indicating that as the price of a good decreases, the quantity demanded increases. Imagine a sale at a store. As prices drop, more people are willing to buy, or maybe they're willing to buy more of the same item. The supply curve shows the quantity of a good that sellers are willing to offer at various prices. It typically is upward sloping, indicating that as the price of a good increases, the quantity supplied increases. Think again of our farmer's example, growing more crops when prices are high. The interaction of supply and demand determines the market clearing price, where the quantity demanded equals the quantity supplied. In undergrad, you may have heard of this referred to as equilibrium. This price ensures that there are no shortages or surpluses in the market. In the housing market, the equilibrium price is where the number of houses available matches the number of buyers. In this slide, you see an example of what I've just talked about. When prices are high, the quantity supplied is greater than the quantity demanded, and a surplus exists. Imagine a scenario where the price of personal computers is very high. Manufacturers are eager to produce and sell more PCs to capitalize on high prices. However, consumers may not be willing to buy as many PCs at these high prices, leading to a surplus. This surplus indicates that there are more PCs available than consumers are willing to buy. When prices are low, the quantity demanded is greater than the quantity supplied, and a shortage exists. Conversely, if the price of PCs is very low, consumers will want to buy more PCs because they're affordable. However, manufacturers might not be willing to produce as many at these low prices, and that could lead to a shortage. This shortage means that there are not enough PCs to meet consumer demand. Only the market clearing price avoids surpluses and shortages. The market clearing price is the price at which the quantity of PCs demanded by consumers equals the quantity supplied by the manufacturers. At this price, there are no surpluses or shortages, and the market is in equilibrium. When there's an increase in demand for PCs, the demand curve shifts to the right. This shift leads to a higher equilibrium price and a higher equilibrium quantity. For example, if a new technology makes PCs more desirable, maybe the laptop is lighter weight or the battery lasts longer, more consumers will want to buy them, driving up both the price and the quantity sold. Conversely, if there's a decrease in demand for PCs, the demand curve shifts to the left. This shift results in a lower equilibrium price and a lower equilibrium quantity. If consumers start preferring tablets over PCs, the demand for PCs will decrease, leading to lower prices and fewer PCs sold. When there's an increase in the supply of PCs, the supply curve shifts to the right. This shift leads to a lower equilibrium price and a higher equilibrium quantity. For example, if manufacturing costs decrease due to technological advancements, manufacturers can produce more PCs at a lower cost, increasing supply and reducing prices. Conversely, if there's a decrease in the supply of PCs, the supply curve shifts to the left. This shift results in a higher equilibrium price and a lower equilibrium quantity. If there's a shortage of key components needed to manufacture PCs, the supply will decrease, leading to higher prices and fewer PCs available. So let's put all of this together. An increase in demand results in a rightward shift to the demand curve, while a decrease in demand results in a leftward shift. Similarly, an increase in supply results in a rightward shift to the supply curve, while a decrease in supply results in a leftward shift. Movements along a given demand or supply curve are caused by changes in the price of a good. For example, if the price of PCs decrease, there will be a movement along the demand curve resulting in an increase in the quantity demanded. Conversely, if the price of PCs increase, there will be a movement along the supply curve, resulting in an increase in the quantity supplied. Supply and demand analysis can be used to forecast the direction of changes in prices and quantities in the marketplace. By considering whether supply or demand will be affected, or both, we can predict how prices and quantities will change. For example, if we anticipate an increase in demand for PCs due to a new software release, we can predict that prices and quantities will rise. Elasticities measure the sensitivity of quantity demanded and supplied to price changes. Vertical supply and demand curves are referred to as perfectly inelastic, meaning that the quantity does not change with price. Think about insulin for diabetics. No matter how much it costs, they have to have it. Horizontal supply and demand curves are referred to as perfectly elastic, meaning that the quantity changes significantly with price. At a given price and quantity, demand and supply curves with more vertical slopes are relatively more inelastic, while flatter curves are relatively more elastic. I use the example of insulin. The demand for essential medications is relatively inelastic because consumers need them regardless of price, while the demand for luxury goods, say yachts, is more elastic because consumers can easily reduce their consumption if prices rise. This slide illustrates what I've just been talking about in the horizontal and vertical lines. Perfectly inelastic demand and supply curves are vertical, indicating that quantity doesn't change with price. An example of this is the supply of land is perfectly inelastic because the quantity of land is fixed. Perfectly elastic demand and supply curves are horizontal, indicating that quantity changes significantly for price. For example, the supply of a commodity in a highly competitive market can be perfectly elastic because producers can easily enter or exit the market based on price changes. When there is an increase in demand with perfectly inelastic supply, the entire increase in demand is reflected in a higher price with no change in quantity. For example, if the demand for a rare collectible item increases, the price will rise significantly because the supply is fixed. Baseball cards is a great example of this. Only a certain number of them are printed. When there's an increase in demand with perfectly elastic supply, the entire increase in demand is reflected in higher quantity with no change in price. For example, if the demand for a widely available commodity increases, producers can easily increase production to meet the demand without changing the price. When there's an increase in supply with perfectly inelastic demand, the entire increase in supply is reflected in a lower price with no change in quantity. For example, if the supply of a life-saving medication increases, the price will decrease because the quantity demanded is fixed. When there's an increase in supply with perfectly elastic demand, the entire increase in supply is reflected in a higher quantity with no change in price. For example, if the supply of a popular consumer good increases, consumers will buy more at the same price. In the short run, some factors of production are fixed and firms can only adjust variable inputs. A factory may not be able to expand its physical space immediately, but it can hire more workers to increase production. In the medium run, firms can adjust some fixed inputs and make more significant changes to production. For example, a factory might be able to expand its physical space and invest in new machinery. In the long run, all factors of production are variable, and firms can make comprehensive adjustments to optimize production. A factory can relocate to a new site, it can adopt new technologies, or it could completely restructure its operations. When a business faces an increase in costs, it often has to decide how much of that cost to pass on to customers. For example, if the cost of raw materials for a bakery increases, the bakery might raise the price of its bread. However, if the price increase is too high, consumers might buy less bread or switch to a different bakery. The challenge is to find a balance where the business can cover its costs without losing too many customers. At the extremes, the sharing of cost increases can vary significantly. In a highly competitive market, businesses might absorb most of the cost increase to maintain their market share. On the other hand, in a market with little competition, businesses might pass the entire cost increase to customers. Think of utility companies. They often have little competition, so they can pass on cost increases to customers more easily. Prices play a crucial role in coordinating consumption and production decisions. They give suppliers incentives to shift production to high-priced products and gives consumers incentives to reduce the quantity of high-priced products that they buy. This dynamic ensures that the quantity demanded equals the quantity supplied, often referred to as the invisible hand of the market. For example, if the price of coffee rises, farmers might plant more coffee trees, and consumers might buy less coffee, or they might switch to tea. At equilibrium prices, the quantity supplied equals the quantity demanded for all goods. So there are no shortages and no surpluses. This means that everyone who wants to make trades has done so, and all gains from trade have been exhausted. Firms have strong incentives to adopt the most efficient production methods and the value-maximizing output mix. No change in production or distribution can be made without making someone worse off. For instance, in the car market, if the supply and demand are balanced, car manufacturers will produce the right number of cars to meet consumer demand without overproducing or underproducing. Consumer surplus is the difference between what consumers are willing to pay and what they actually have to pay. It's measured as the area below the demand curve and above the price. Producer surplus is the difference between the price received and the willingness to produce, measured as the area above the supply curve and below the price. For example, if a consumer is willing to pay $100 for a concert ticket but buys it for $80, their consumer surplus is $20. Similarly, if the producer is willing to sell a product for $50 but it sells for $70, their producer surplus is $20. Consumer and producer surplus are essential concepts in understanding the benefits of trade. They represent the gains that consumers and producers receive from participating in the market. During a sale, consumers might get products at lower prices, increasing their consumer surplus, while producers might sell more products, increasing their producer surplus. Consumer-producer surplus can also be used to examine the effects of government intervention on gains from trade. Price caps limit the maximum price that can be charged, while price floors are a legally set minimum price at which goods can be traded. For example, rent control is a price cap that limits how much landlords can charge. Government price caps on gasoline can lead to unintended consequences. Imagine that the government sets a maximum price for gasoline to make it more affordable for consumers. We would all like this, and while it may seem beneficial, it can lead to shortages because suppliers might not find it profitable to sell gasoline at that capped price. As a result, consumers may face long lines at gas stations and limited availability of gasoline. I remember this firsthand. I'm dating myself a little bit. In the 1970s, the United States implemented price controls on gasoline during the oil crisis. These controls led to widespread shortages, long lines at gas stations, and even rationing. I can remember my mom packing us a lunch, and we would go sit in the gas line and get 5 gallons of gas, and then we would go home, go to the swimming pool for a little while, and go back in the evening and buy another 5 gallons of gas. True story. The price cap disrupted the market's ability to balance supply and demand, highlighting the challenges of government intervention in pricing. Minimum wage laws set a legally mandated minimum price for labor. While the intention is to ensure workers earn a fair wage, it can have mixed effects. On one hand, it can improve the standard of living for low-wage workers. On the other hand, though, it can lead to unemployment if employers cannot afford to pay higher wages and reduce their workforce. In Seattle, the minimum wage was raised to $15 per hour. While some workers benefited from higher wages, studies showed that some businesses reduced their staff or cut hours to manage the increased labor costs. This illustrates the complex impact of minimum wage laws on employment and business operations. Externalities occur when the actions of one party affect the well-being or production possibilities of another party outside of the exchange relationship. Common examples of this include pollution, noise, and graffiti. Markets may not be efficient in the presence of externalities. The Coase theorem argues that market exchange will be efficient if property rights can be traded and transaction costs are sufficiently low. Consider a factory that pollutes a nearby river, affecting the local fishing industry. According to the Coase theorem, if the fishermen can negotiate with the factory and agree on compensation for the pollution, the market can reach an efficient outcome. However, if transaction costs are high or property rights are unclear, government intervention might be necessary to address the externality. General knowledge is freely transferable, while specific knowledge is expensive to transfer. Certain centrally planned economies often fail because specific knowledge is not used in the planning process. Prices convey general knowledge, allowing markets to allocate resources efficiently. Here's a real-world example of this. The collapse of the Soviet Union is a prime example of the failure of central planning. The government struggled to gather and utilize specific knowledge about local conditions, leading to inefficiencies and economic stagnation. In contrast, market economies like the U.S. use prices to convey information and allocate resources effectively. Specific knowledge refers to detailed information about particular circumstances, scientific knowledge, and assembled knowledge. This type of knowledge is crucial for making informed decisions and optimizing resource allocation. In the tech industry, companies like Google and Apple rely on specific knowledge about consumer preferences, technological advancements, and market trends to develop innovative products. This specific knowledge allows them to stay competitive and meet the needs of their firms. Exist to minimize transaction costs, which include search and information costs, bargaining, decision costs, drafting, policing, and enforcement costs, and the opportunity cost of inefficient resource allocation. Optimal economic organization minimizes these transaction costs. Think of Amazon. By centralizing operations and reducing transaction costs, Amazon can efficiently manage inventory, negotiate with suppliers, and deliver products to consumers. This efficiency is a key reason for the existence and success of firms. Firms have advantages over markets in terms of fewer transactions, information specialization, and reputational concerns. These advantages help firms operate more efficiently and effectively. In the construction industry, firms like Bechtel manage large-scale projects by specializing in contracting and reducing transaction costs. Their reputation for quality and reliability allows them to secure contracts and complete projects more efficiently. If markets are efficient, stock issuance or buybacks at fair value don't hurt existing shareholders. Market returns reflect true performance. I want to briefly go through some key ideas in the appendix. If you find that this is an area where you're struggling, spend some extra time in the textbook studying and learning these concepts. A Assuming shareholder wealth maximization helps identify what managers should do to meet their fiduciary responsibilities. This means that managers focus on making decisions that increase the value of the company for its shareholders. For example, a manager might decide to invest in a new technology that promises high returns, thereby increasing the company's stock price and benefiting shareholders. It also describes what good managers actually do when given appropriate incentives. When managers are rewarded based on the company's performance, they're more likely to make decisions that align with shareholder interests. For instance, performance-based bonuses can motivate managers to work towards increasing profits and enhancing shareholder value. When I worked in corporate America, as much as 25% of my salary was tied to profit margins. Present value is a financial concept that helps determine the current worth of a future cash flow. It's calculated by discounting the future cash flow at a specific rate. For example, if you expect to receive $1,000 in a year and the discount rate is 5%, the present value of that $1,000 is approximately $952. This concept is crucial for making investment decisions for companies, as it allows investors to compare the value of money received in the future with the money that they receive today. The value of a share of stock is determined by the expected future dividends and the risk-adjusted discount rate. For example, if a company is expected to pay dividends of $2 per share annually and the discount rate is 10%, the value of the stock can be calculated using the dividend discount model that you see here. This model helps investors determine whether a stock is undervalued or overvalued based on its expected future cash flows. The value of a stock is not just based on current dividend, but also on the expected future dividends. Investors consider the company's growth potential and future profitability when determining the stock's value. For instance, a tech company with high growth prospects may have higher stock value compared to a mature company with stable but lower growth. Stock market efficiency refers to the idea that share prices respond quickly and rationally to new information. This means that prices reflect the present values of expected future net cash flows to shareholders. In an efficient market, investors should not expect to, quote, beat the market on a systematic basis because all available information is already reflected in the stock prices. If a company announces a breakthrough product, its stock price will quickly adjust to reflect the new information. In efficient financial markets, there's no ambiguity about the firm's objective function, which is to maximize shareholder value. Management decisions that do not affect current or future cash flows are considered a wasted effort. For example, if a company spends resources on projects that do not generate returns, it's not maximizing shareholder value. New securities issued at market prices do not threaten current shareholders, as the market efficiently prices the new securities based on the available information. Additionally, security returns are meaningful measures of the firm's performance, providing valuable feedback to management on the effectiveness of their decisions. In your case study, we will start to examine this and look at it. Main concepts covered in this lecture, including the Pareto efficiency, role of property rights in the market, how comparative advantage fosters trade, the function of supply and demand in reaching equilibrium, and the impact of price controls on the market are key takeaways from this lecture. If you need to refer back to it when working on the case study, I encourage you to refer to your textbook for this.